All right, we are back with Chapter 6%, working on Lesson 1, fractions, decimals, and percents, and this is the guided practice. So I'm going to do a few problems to get you started, and then I'm going to have you do some, and then we'll just kind of go back and forth. So the first one, problems are, the directions say to write each decimal as a percent. So let's go ahead and get started. Now, when I have these decimals, I know that if I want to convert this to a percentage, I just need to move the decimal point 2 places to the right. And so that's what I'm going to do. So if I have 0.34, if I want to make it into a percentage, I'm just going to move it 2 places to the right. 1, 2. And so I'm left with 34%. Okay? And the same is true for number 2. I'm going to move it 2 places to the right. 1, 2. I'm left with, this 0.008 decimal, which is just the same thing as 8%. Okay, so now it's your turn. I want you to go ahead and work out problems 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8. Just those ones. So go ahead and press pause, work those problems out. When you get done, press play, and we'll go over your results. All right, see you in a bit. All right, we are back. Let's go ahead and talk about number 3. We're going to move this 2 places to the right. 1, 2, we're left with 19%. So if you got that one right, great job. Number 4 is 0.64. We're going to move it 2 places to the right, which gives us 64%. Okay, number 5 is a little different. There's 0.561, but we're just going to do the same thing. We're going to move it 2 places to the right. And we're left with 56.1%. So that would be the answer. Let's do 6. We're just going to do the same thing, move it 2 places to the right, and we're left with 4.9%. Number 7, again, we're going to move it 2 places to the right. We're left with 10.5%. And lastly, we have 0.9. We're going to move it 2 places to the right. 1, 2, there's nothing there, so we add a 0, and we're left with 90%. So if you got all those right, great job. Okay, let's move on to the next set of problems. Write each fraction as a percent. So I'm going to go ahead and work out 9, 10, 11, and 12. We're going to do those together, and then I'm going to have you do 13, 14, 15, and 16 on your own. So we talked about a lot of different methods for how to do these. I'm going to choose the method that is going to be easiest for myself, okay? So this first one, 1/4, I know that I can write this with a denominator. We're going to write each fraction as a percent. I can write this with a denominator of 100 pretty easily, so I'm just going to do that. I'm going to go 1/4. I know if I multiply it by 25, I get a denominator of 100, and I'm going to do that for whatever I did to the bottom, I'm going to do it to the top. I get 1 times 25, which is 25. 25 over 100 is the same thing as 25%. I noticed the same thing for 7/50. On to problem 10. I can write this one with a denominator of 100 pretty easily as well. All I have to do is multiply it by 2. Okay, so if I go 50 times 2, I get 100. Okay, so whatever I do to the bottom, I'm also going to do that to the top. 7 times 2 is 14. 14 out of 100 is the same thing as 14%. Now, number 11, we move on to 15 over 16. 16 is not really easy to write with a denominator as 100. So this way that I used over here is not really advantageous here. So I'm going to do the long division. I have to do 15 divided by 16. So that's what I'm going to do. 15 divided by 16. Now, does 16 go into 15? No, it does not. So I'm going to add a decimal place and add a 0. Now, does 15 go into 150? Yes, it does. Now, I'm not exactly sure how many times. I think I'm going to think of 16 as 15. And if I count by 15s, it would be, because 16 is close to 15. I would go, let's see here, 15, 30, 45, what would it be then, 60? So then that is 1, 2, 3, 4. So if I went 60 plus 60, that would be 120, which would be 8 times. So I think I would try 9 times. Another thing, if I took 16 and multiplied it by 10, that would be 160. So I think I'm going to try 9. So I'm going to go up over here and just figure out what 16 times 9 is. I think that's going to be my closest. 9 times 6 is 54. Write the 4, carry the 5. 9 times 1 is 9 plus 5 would be 14. So yeah, it's going to go in 9 times. 9 times 16, I just figured it out. It's 144. And then I'm going to subtract. I have to borrow here. And that's a 4. 10 take away 4 is going to be 6. 4 take away 4 is 0. 1 take away 1 is 0. I have a remainder, so I have to add a 0 and bring it down. And so I need to figure out how many times 16 goes into 60. Well, I think, if I think about this as 15, 15 goes into 60 1, 2, 3, 4 times. But 16 is bigger than 15. And 15 goes into 60 exactly 4 times. So since this is bigger, I know it can't go in 4 times. So it's going to probably have to go in 3 times. 3 times 6 is 18. Write the 8, carry the 1. 3 times 1 is 3, plus 1 is 4. Then I'm going to subtract and make this a 5. 10 take away 8 is 2. 5 take away 4 is 1. And then I'm going to add a 0 and drop it down. So now I have 120. Okay, so now I need to figure out how many times 16 goes into 120. Let's see here. When we thought about 16 as 15, we know that 15 goes into 60 4 times. And if we went 60 plus 60 would be 120. So that means that 15 would go into 128 times, but 16 is bigger than 15, so we know it can't go in 8 times. So it's going to have to go in 7 times. 7 times 6 is going to be 42. Write the 2, carry the 4. 7 times 1 is 7, plus 4 would be 11. Okay, and then I'm going to just, this isn't big enough, I have to borrow. So I end up with 10 take away 2, which is 8. And I still have a remainder, so I'm going to add another 0 and drop it down. And now 16 goes into 80. Let's see here. It might go in 5 times. 5 times? It may go into 5 times. I'm just going to go over here on the side and figure out what 16 times 5 is. 16 times 5. 5 times 6 is 30. Write the 0, carry the 3. 5 times 1 is 5, plus 3 is 8. So yes, it does. It goes in 5 times exactly. 5 times 16, we just figured out is 80. No remainder, we're done. Whew! All right. That was a fun one. So we end up with our answer 0.9375. And we have a decimal, and to convert it to a percentage, we're just going to go ahead and move it over 2 places. So we end up with 93.75%. That is our answer. Okay, great. So some of these, it's easier to get a denominator of 100, but some of these where it's not easier to get it as a denominator of 100, you're just going to have to do the long division. Okay? Let's go over here to number 12, 9/20. Now what I see with 9/20 is that it's pretty easy to get 100 from 20 because I know that 20 times 5 is 100. If you didn't know that, you could just do the long division, 9 divided by 20, and you get the answer. But I know that if I multiply the bottom and the top by 5, I can get 100 in the denominator, which is what I want. 20 times 5 is 100. And then we just go this, 9 times 5, which is 45, and 45 out of 100 is the same thing as 45%. Okay, now it is your turn. on 13, 14, 15, and 16. So if you can find an easy way to get a denominator of 100, go ahead and do that. If it's not easy, like this one, 8 is not, you can't do that. So you're going to have to do long division here. And 40 is not easy. You're going to have to do long division there. So go ahead and press pause on your device, work out 13, 14, 15, and 16, change them into percents, and then press play when you're done, and we'll check your answers and see how you did. Okay, we're back with number 13, 7/8. 8, it's not easy to make that into a denominator of 100, so we're just going to have to do the long division. 7 divided by 8. Now, does 8 go into 7? No, it does not, so I'm going to have to add this decimal, add a 0. Does 8 go into 70? Yes, it does. It goes in 8 times. 8 times 8 is 64. Yeah, 8 times 8 is 64. Then I subtract. I have to borrow, make that a 6. 10 take away 4 is 6. I have a remainder, so I need to add a 0 and then drop it down like it's hot. Drop it like it's hot. Drop it like it's hot. Okay, 8 goes into 60. Well, it doesn't go in 8 times because 8 times 8 is 64, and that's too big. So it's going to go in 7 times. 7 times 8 is 56. Then I'm going to subtract. I have to borrow here, making that a 5. And this is a 10. 10 take away 6 is 4. I still have a remainder, so I'm going to add another 0 and drop it like it's hot. Drop it like it's hot. Okay, 8 goes into 40 5 times. 5 times 8 is 40. No remainder. Boom, I have the answer. So my answer is, in decimal format, is 0.875. I want to convert this to a percentage. So I'm going to have to move it over. That decimal place is 2 places to the right. 1, 2. I'm left with 87.5%. That is my answer. Woohoo! Okay. If you got that one right, great job. Let's move on to problem 14. So problem 14, it is not easy to make 40 into 100. So I'm just going to do the long division. 9 divided by 40. So 9 divided by 40. Does 40 go into 9? No, it does not. So I'm going to add the decimal, add a 0. Does 40 go into 90? Yes, it does, 2 times. 2 times 0, 0. 2 times 4 is 8. Okay, then I'm going to go ahead and do the subtraction. There's 0, and 9 minus 8 is 1. This is less than 40, which is great. Means we did it right. And but I have a remainder, so I'm going to have to add a 0 and drop it like it's hot. Drop it like it's hot. Okay, how many times does 40 go into 100? Well, 40 goes into 100 2 times. 2 times 40 is 80 again. We subtract 100, take away 80, and that's 0. And then I have to borrow. 10 take away 8 is 2. I have a remainder, which is less than 40, which is great, but there's still a remainder, so I have to add a 0 and then drop it like it's hot. Drop it like it's hot. 40 goes into 200. Pretty sure it goes in 5 times. 5 times 0 is 0. 5 times 4 is 20. And we have no remainder, so there we have our decimal. 0.225. I'm going to convert this into a percentage just by moving it over 2 places to the right. And I'm left with 22.5%. Perfecto. All right, so if you got that one right, great job. Okay, let's move on to problem 15. We have 11 over 50. The cool thing about having it over 50 is I know it's super easy to make this into a denominator with 100. All I have to do is multiply it by 2. So whatever I do to the bottom, I'm going to do it to the top. 50 times 2 is 100. 11 times 2 is 22. And I'm left with 22%. Man, that is so much easier than that. Okay, 4/5. 5 is another one that I know I can make it into 100 pretty easily. I can just multiply 5 by 20. If you don't see that, if you just go 4 divided by 5, you're going to get the same answer. Okay, so that's okay. So 5 times 20 is 100. So whatever I do to the bottom, I'm going to do to the top. So I get 5 times 20, which is 100. 4 times 20, which is 80. 80 over 100 is the same thing as 80%. So if you got that one right, Great job. Let's move on to the next page. Okay, so for these problems, what we're going to be doing is we're going to be comparing these with the less than, greater than, or equal sign. So I'm going to do a couple together, and then you're going to do some on your own. So what I want to do is I want to change these to the same format. 0.16, I'm going to change them into decimal format. 0.16 is good. I have 1/10 and I need to convert that into a decimal. I know that 1/10 is the same thing as 1/10 in the tenths place, but I need this to have 2 decimal places. Right now it only has 1 decimal place, so I need another decimal place and there's nothing there, so I just add a 0, okay? So when I have 0.16 and 0.10, I know that 0.16 is bigger. So the alligator is going to eat the bigger one. If that was an alligator, that's what it would look like. So the sign goes that way. 0.16 is greater than 1/10. Okay? Let's go on to the next example, 18. I have a fraction and a percentage. I'm going to convert them both into decimals. Now when I'm looking at this right here, 3/5, I know that I can make this into a fraction with 100 pretty easily. I could do the long division and just go 3 divided by 5. Or I can go 3/5 times 20, because 5 times 20 is 100, to the bottom and the top. And I get 100, and then 3 times 20 is 60. Okay, and 60 100ths is the same thing as 60 100ths, right? This is the tenths, this is the hundredths place, so that's 60 100ths. And then I have a 60%, and remember, if we have a percentage and we're trying to change it into a decimal, you go 2 places to the left, you go backwards. So 1, 2, and I would be left with 0.60. Now these are the same thing, so that means that 3/5 is actually equal to 60%. All right? So that's kind of how these work. I want you to go ahead and work out problems 19, 20, 21, and 32 by converting them both to decimals with 2 places. And then, yeah, just go for there. So there's our friend, the pause dragon, reminding you to pause, work out problems 19, 20, 21, and 22. When you get done, press play, and we'll talk about the answers. All right, see you in a bit. Okay, we're back. Let's go ahead and see how you did on problem 19. So I'm going to convert these to decimals with 2 decimal places. This one is already converted, which is wonderful. I have a fraction here. I'm going to convert it to a decimal. This is 3/10, right? So that's pretty nice. I can just write it as 0.3. That is 3/10. However, I need 2 decimal places. This is the tenths place, so 3/10. So I need 2 decimal places, so that means I need another place value here. There's nothing there, so I put a 0. So I end up with 0.30 and 0.03, and 0.30 is definitely bigger than 0.03, so I know that this one's bigger. 3/10 is greater than 0.03. Perfect. Let's move on to problem 20. So for problem 20, I'm going to go ahead and convert these to decimals. These fractions I can write as a denominator. This one I can write as a denominator of 100 pretty easily. So I'm going to go 12 over 50, multiply it by 2 to the bottom and the, 2, to the bottom and the top. 50 times 2 is 100. 12 times 2 is going to be 24. 24 100ths is the same thing as 24 100ths. Okay, so there's my decimal. This is 4/10. I don't really need to write it as a denominator with 100 because I can just write it as 4/10, right? And I want to have the same decimal places, so I'm going to put a 0 then, 0 there, and I get 0.40. Now out of this, if we have 0.24, 0.40, this one is going to be bigger, so the alligator is going to eat this one. So that's where we write our sign like that. So 12/50 is less than 4/10. Okay, now we have 34%, number 21, 34% and 3/4. So 34% is pretty easy to convert to a decimal. I just need to move it 2 places to the left, and I end up with 0.34. 3/4, I can do this as long division, but I also see that it's pretty easy to convert this to a fraction with 100 in the denominator, because I know 4 times 25 is 100. And whatever I do to the bottom, I just need to do it to the top. 3 times 25, I always like 25s because it reminds me of quarters. So if I have 3/4, that's 75, right? 75 cents. So that means 3 times 25 is 75. So now I have 75/100ths, which is the same thing as 75/100ths. That's a tenths. This is a hundredths place, 75/100ths. So out of these two, 0.34 and 0.75, I know that this one is bigger. So that means that 34% is less than 3/4. So if you got that one right, great job. Let's move on to problem 22. Again, I have a percentage and a decimal. I don't need to do anything to this one because it's done, which is great. So I just need to convert this percentage into a decimal. Pretty easy to do. I just move it 2 places to the left. I end up with 0.32 and 0.23. And when I look at these, I'm looking at the tenths place, right? And the 3 is bigger than the 2. That means this one's bigger. So yeah. The alligator eats the bigger one. So there we have it. There's our answer. So if you got all those right, great job. Okay. Let's go ahead and figure out problem 23. I want you to go ahead and try to do it on your own. So press pause, work out 23, and when you get done, press play and we'll see how you did. All right, we're back. Let's go ahead and see how you did on problem 23. It states, in a survey, 25 students were asked whether they prefer orange juice or grape juice. 17 students said they prefer orange juice. What percent of the students said they prefer orange juice? Okay, so there's a couple key pieces of information. It says, in a survey, 25 students were asked. So that's the total. 25 students is the total. Okay, 25 students were asked whether they prefer orange juice or grape juice. 17 of the students said they prefer orange juice. What percentage of the students surveyed said they preferred orange juice? So we can figure this out by figuring out the number of students who preferred orange juice over the total number of students. That's going to give us our fraction. So how many students preferred orange juice? Well, there were 17 out of the total, which was 25. So we have our fraction. Now we just need to convert this into a percentage. Now I could do the long division here, right? But what I see with this 25 is this 25 is really super easy to make it into 100. All I need to do is multiply it by 4 to the bottom and to the top. So when I go 25 times 4, that equals 100. When I go 17 times 4, I don't know that one off the top of my head. I'm going to have to do the multiplication over here. 17 times 4, 4 times 7 is 28. Write the 8, carry the 2. 4 times 1 is 4, plus 2 is 6. So it ends up being 68 over 100, which is the same thing as 68%. So that means that 68% of the students preferred, is that how you write that? Oh, preferred, sorry. Preferred, sorry about that. Preferred orange juice. Okay, so if you got that one right, yoku de kimashita. You did a great job, and we will see you next time. Bye-bye.